Hi there, Sandra here. In today's video, I'm going to set up my very first travel palette with gouache. In May, I bought new art supplies, and one of the things I bought is this travel palette from the brand Mijello. And I got this palette because I thought it was a good quality palette and supposedly is leak-proof. The paint should remain more moist and fresh inside for weeks, for watercolors at least, and there is plenty of space as mixing areas with an extra removable clean mixing tray for easy cleanup, which I love, and it comes with 18 wells. The wells hold a lot of paints, which is nice, and this palette is very lightweight. While I was selecting my gouache colors, I have more than 18 gouache tubes, but I realized I don't use 18 colors. I have about 14 favorite gouache colors that I regularly use, so there were too many wells for me, so I just chose extra colors that I might need to mix colors to put in this palette. So this is my first time setting up a palette with my gouache colors. I'm not a super fan of this kind of palette because they are made of plastic and I prefer ceramic as mixing surface because it doesn't get stained while plastic does. I usually paint at home, so I always squeezed my gouache fresh out of the tubes on a ceramic mixing surface. I know a lot of artists, especially watercolor artists, like working by setting their own palette. I think for watercolors this method it's fine, but with gouache it's not the same, so it's not for me. I like working with fresh and creamy consistency of gouache that you get from the tubes, because at least with gouache, if you leave it in open air, it will dry and it might crack. You can reactivate gouache with water once it's dry, so you don't waste paint. But to me, when I reactivate gouache on the palette, I don't get the same creamy consistency as when it comes out fresh out of the tube. But I still wanted to set up my own palette for when I go outside for painting. I have a Winsor & Newton watercolor palette which I used so far when I wanted to paint outside instead of just drawing and sketching, but I enjoy more working with gouache than watercolors, so that's why I wanted to have my own gouache palette. It's way more handy having a travel palette that you can bring along with you when you travel or you go outside and paint, instead of bringing all your gouache tubes with you. So I selected gouache colors from different brands, most from Royal Talents, some from Winsor & Newton, and one color from Schminke Gouache. For deciding which color to put in what place, I decided to separate my colors by brand and then by tone of color. I also made a color chart, just in case I forget what color I put where. By setting up this palette, I want to test how much my gouache will crack over the following weeks, which color or which brand will crack more or stay moist. Apparently, hair shouldn't pass through this palette, but I don't really trust it, so I expect that my gouache will dry, and I want to see how much. And especially, I want to see how I feel working with my own gouache palette to paint outside, since I've never done it before. If I'm comfortable working with this palette, if it works for me, I will see. And I will keep you updated. I'm going to make an update video somewhere in the near future, where in the following days and weeks, I'm going to track the progress of what happens to this palette. I hope tracking progress is the right term, but I hope you get what I mean. which I hope it will be useful to you. And I think that's it. I hope you enjoyed watching me setting up my gouache palette, but for now I will see you in the next video. Bye!